Good morning, everyone. Hope everybody's doing well this morning. My name's Andrew Kircher. I'm a Michigan Lighthouse Alliance board member, and I work here in Port Huron, so associated with both the Fort Gratiot Light Station and the Huron Light Ship, both part of Port Huron Museums. And I'm going to be one of the hosts of the session today. So we're going to, as we've logged on here, we should all see, hopefully, Lou and Buzz are highlighted speakers today. We're going to be having a discussion. We're really excited to have you. So we're all excited to have you here to see this, to talk about donors, goal setting, and grants. Now, just briefly, we'll go over a little bit of Zoom participant instructions here. So if you do have any questions, we're going to have some time for those. So you can always throw them up in the chat. I'll keep my eyes on that. It's in the toolbar at the bottom of the screen. We'll try and answer any of those if some come up right in the middle of the presentation. We'll pass them along. We'll have some time at the end. So if you have any questions, you can always chat them. I think a pretty good practice is while we've got Buzz and Lou speaking, if you just want to place yourself on mute, and we'll have time to kind of chat at the end and unmute yourself. And we're going to also record this. So this recording will be available for everyone at the end, and we'll get that emailed out to everyone. So all of that being said, we're going to kind of get started here. So this is actually the third of our series. I know some folks have been with us for some of this. Is the third in our Be the Beacon series in advance of our upcoming conference. So many of you know we have a conference every couple of years. We hope to see you all in Port Huron this year, which our theme is connecting with and guiding your community. What are lighthouses, if not beacons, to their community? And that's going to be April 21st through 23rd in Port Huron. So registration is open. Like I said, we are really excited to see you there. We're really excited to host this in Port Huron. But joining me, of course, Buzz Hoerr, MLA board member and Harbor Beach Lighthouse Preservation Society president, and Lou Schillinger, MLA founding board member and president of the Port Austin Reef Lighthouse Association. So if you don't know these lighthouses, you are missing out. But we've got a nice little map of them right up here, north of Port Huron along the Skeleton Coast, where early mariners with the boulder-strewn waters, pretty dangerous place for shipping. So a lot of aids of navigations were added right after the Civil War with the increased commercial traffic that you saw on the Great Lakes. So Buzz, Lou, I don't want to do all the talking here, so I'm going to ask you guys to talk a little bit about your projects, maybe more specifically where they're located, and what you've gone through to organize your groups to talk about, the conditions that you're in up there. So, Buzz, why don't we start with you?
Thanks, Andrew. I appreciate it. Welcome, everybody. This is, as Andrew said, the third one of these events we've done, and it's been a lot of fun. We've had some great conversations with people, and indeed, thanks for the plug for the conference. We always look forward to finally seeing all these people we hear about, talk to, exchange information with on their lighthouses, and finally be able to get together in person is always a big help and foster those relationships, because it can be a bit of a lonely game. Andrew was talk a little bit about your lighthouses. So ours is number 91 there in Huron County, the Harbor Beach Lighthouse. And the picture that had the opening slide that had the lighthouses around the rim, if Andrew can pop that back up again for those of you who haven't seen Harbor Beach before, we'll put that picture in so you can see what it looks like. Bottom right, was it? There you go. So our lighthouse is conveniently located, and I mean that because compared to what you're going to hear from Lou out on the wild,
Did we lose you, Buzz? But Buzz is out there a ways, so he might have a small interruption. We'll wait just a second for him, but Lou, maybe you want to talk a little bit about your lighthouse while we wait for Buzz here.
Sure, Buzz. As you can see, both our lighthouses are located in Huron County. Thank you, Andrew, and thank you all of you for attending. I see a lot of familiar faces and a lot of familiar names, so I appreciate having this opportunity to do that. This is the first time I've ever done a podcast of any sort, and so this has been kind of an exciting event for us as well. We are in the middle of the wilds. We are, as you can see at number 99, we are at the tip of the Niagara Escarpment. We're on the edge of a very solid iron reef, or a rock reef. And in fact, only a few yards beyond our lighthouse, it drops off to 40 feet. Around the lighthouse, it's only about a foot and a half to 3 feet deep. This year, a little bit more shallow. So it's at the crux of Saginaw Bay in Lake Huron. So it's most always rough in that particular location. So we've been involved in this project since 1985. You'd think by now we'd have been able to figure out what we've been doing and how we're ever going to get an end to it. But with our help, with the help of all of the MLA and our friends' lighthouses, we've all continued to be encouraged as we went through the project. Some of you may remember one of our original members, Dick Mole, who started up in Mackinac with Lake Huron with the St. Helene Lighthouse. Dick and I met early in the 80s, which is when I got started. Dick looked at me and says, you're nuts. You want to try to do this? He said, there's one thing I'm going to tell you that you absolutely have to remember. You absolutely, unequivocally have to ignore the word no. You're going to hear it a lot. No one can't do. He said, you just got to bull through. And if anybody Dick, that was Dick. He was kind of a bull in a china shop, but he accomplished so much. He was able to foster the lighthouse industry, which Buzz and I have been a benefactor, and all of us as well. So it's been a long project, a long process for us, and as are most of these. And each of these lighthouses, I'm sure you know, come from communities, and each of them are different, not only physically, but the personalities in which they are located, the communities, the members, the partners, the donors, they're all very different and very unique to the location. And Buzz and I, we've known each other now for 35 years. Buzz tooled up to our lighthouse 35 years ago at his whaler, wanted to know what we're doing, and I want to know what he was doing. And we've been good friends since that time. And Buzz, interestingly enough, I'm speaking for him, has managed his lighthouse 5 states away. I still can't quite figure out how he's been able to do that from Vermont, and done an outstanding job. But we only recently, as in a couple of days ago, realized that our developments were completely divergent in how we raised funds. And the title of this particular episode or event is about raising funds in the communities. We raised our funds and our growth totally differently, and we never realized it. Buzz went the private donor side. We were almost entirely dependent upon Michigan Lighthouse Assistance Program. Do we have any pictures of? Yes, if you have the picture of our lighthouse beginning and ending, you can see why we started. This is
We've got we'll go maybe a little out of order here, since I know Buzz, I'm sure, is, hey, there he is.
He's got an internet issue there. This, at the photograph on the left, is what I saw in 1985, and we realized we had a building that was quickly going to be gone. And we did learn at that time that the Coast Guard had scheduled the building, the tower, to be destroyed within about 18 months, replaced with a pole. Now remember, these are just old government buildings that had a function, which was to mark the reef. They didn't really care about the lighthouse or the building or the historic significance. And in their case, every single visit that they had to make in the spring ended up in an injury by one of the Coast Guardsmen, because our lighthouse had 3.5 feet of pigeon manure everywhere. For up the staircase, all the buildings. There was no roof, as you can see, very few windows, and it had been abandoned since the mid-50s. So they were going to tear it down, and I was fortunate enough to get wind of a program called PM Magazine at that time, back in the late mid-80s. And the first lighthouse that was leased was the Chicago Harbor Lighthouse to a fellow by the name of Sterling Bemis. At that time, they gave me his phone number at his office, which I called, and he said, "Lou, are you crazy?" I said, "Yeah, I'm 35. I got lots of time on my hands. What can we do?" His answer was to call Ninth District and ask for permission, but do not send him anything in writing, because everything had to be responded in triplicate, which is what we did. And we were able to get our first 5-year license. The only requirement we had was that we had to pay him $10 a year, and I had to return it in at least the same condition as when he got it, which, as you can see, was not difficult. That and the photograph on the right was the lighthouse 10 years later. So I'm gonna see if we can. Is Buzz back again? Does he want to finish his?
Yeah, he was working on it, he popped in. Buzz is having, as we all know with lighthouses, especially ones in can be more rural areas, he's been having trouble with some of his Xfinity all week. We were fine all morning, but as Murphy's Law would have it, this is the time it's not cooperating. So hopefully he can join us again. By the back, he popped in. We'll keep our eyes open for him to pop in. But I think, Lou, you could probably speak to the fact that one of the other things that I certainly know, and it's true in our story at Fort Gratiot and the preservation efforts here, is you always have to be somewhat flexible. Nothing ever goes exactly as planned, which I think is evident right now. So have you found that to be true in your case?
Absolutely. And I think if you look at our title, it said, it said grants, oh my. Well, goal setting should be oh my, because our goal setting was weekend by weekend. It depended upon the weather. In the early years, it was dependent upon the money we had in our pocket that particular day, what tools we needed to have, and who we had show up. We're 2.5 miles offshore, as I said, in the crux of Saginaw Bay and Huron County. And even though it may look calm in some places, it was always very rough in Port Austin. So our goal setting in the early years was, as I said, just week to week. We had started, or I had been part of an organization in Port Austin called the Port Austin Community Players. Group of about 20 people. All of us were, I call them expats. None of us were ever Port Austin residents. We'd all been moved there shortly before. So we were not a local. We had started a community theater. And when my father and I returned from the first trip we made out there in 1985, I latched on to this group, and this same team of idiots followed me for 35 years. We've all been still friends 35 years later. And it was that group of people who started the project. And again, none of us were professional restorers. None of us had a lot of history background. None of us were carpenters. None of us were mechanical. None of us were cement contractors. We just started with what we had available. In this case, we started with a 20-foot ladder from the dock because there was no stairway. The Coast Guard had long ago cut it off to avoid the vandals. It was 3 years into our restoration where one calm day we saw the ladder shadow about 200 yards away on the reef. We spent the entire summer dragging that ladder back with a come along. You want a little come along, little 2-foot come along, 2 foot, 2 foot, 2 foot. Took us the entire summer. I think our biceps were all this big, but we got it back and we realized it had no steps. All the steps were around the base of the lighthouse. One of our members was a diver, and we recovered all of the steps, reattached them, and reattached the ladder to the deck. And from that point on, we had access to the lighthouse. So, our goal setting in the early years was just day to day. And our goal setting was to try to find the floor in the steam room because we had no roof. We'd shovel for 4 or 5 hours out of 3 or 4 days. By the time we came back a week or so later, it looked as if we had done nothing. So that was our primary goal in those early years, just getting it cleaned out. In
Yeah,
1990,
so
yeah, go ahead.
one question, and I think Buzz may be back in. We'll see. Buzz, when
Yeah.
if you get back in, let us know. I know you're having some troubles there, but um, you took a great personal passion, and you talked a little bit here about how you didn't do this alone. And we know that no lighthouse is saved by a single person. And you talked about some of that goal setting. How did you get other people interested? How did you bring them up to your level of passion for this? Because that's ultimately what it takes for any of these light stations. I think
Outstanding.
Buzz, we're still waiting on Buzz. So Lou, if you want to maybe try and tackle that and talk a little bit about
Well,
you did that goal setting with those other folks. How did you first approach getting other people on board?
well, as I mentioned, we were all a group of expat friends who had just formed a nonprofit theater group.
So
That
did you get anyone outside of the theater group, or did you find that was enough for your initial kind of core?
that was our core. There was about 15 or 20 of us, all in about our 30s. That and about several cases of beer each weekend was how we kept everybody interested. We were young, we worked hard, and we played hard, and developed a long lasting relationship as a result. So that's how I did it. Nobody was particularly interested in lighthouses or of any sort. We just said, hey guys, what are we doing this weekend? And I dragged 15 or 20 of us out there, and we spent the whole weekend shoveling, cleaning, tossing beer cans into a container. It was just a fun weekend for a group of 35-year-olds. That's how we got started. And of course, once you start a project like this, it becomes part of your day, part of your week. In our case, part of our summer. Many of us started by saying, how many hours a summer did we all spend? We had the 100-hour club, where everyone who'd spent 100 hours out there would be given a mug or something similar to that. So it grew. It grew. It's just like anything else. Once you establish a habit, it becomes very, very difficult to change it. And I was very fortunate and blessed, frankly, to have a group of friends who enjoyed the same sort of excitement and began to fall in love with lighthouses throughout Huron County and Harbor Beach, and Point of Barks, and other lighthouses in Michigan, and also in Mackinac. So we developed a group of aficionados and friendships together at the same time. That's kind of how we did it.
So you also talked a little bit about how your funding goals, and you worked a lot more uh, towards the kind of grant side. And I think we actually have a slide about some of that, grant manual. And maybe you could talk a little bit about your experience with that, and maybe after that initial, basic stabilization, which sounds like it was a real challenge. What were kind of your next steps from there?
Well, again, we didn't plan very well. There was no real forward planning. It was taken on ad hoc basis, but we realized that we could not tackle the major projects on our own until we had title to the lighthouse. It was very difficult to get grants. We received title finally in 2013 through support from Candace Miller. Now, if that is almost 30 years after we started the project, before we had title. Everything up to that point was only the money that we had available in our own individual pockets. We had Christmas tree sales and chicken sales and dinners and banquets and all kinds of things to raise small amounts of money, but none of it was enough to really accomplish what we needed. The first project, and when Michigan Lighthouse Assistance Program came along in, oh gosh, I'm not sure when that started. It seems to me it was the late 90s, with the Michigan license plates fees. We received our first grant, which was primarily to obtain our historic structures report, which you see next to that slide. That was a $35,000 project. We were able to get the grant money. Of course, it was you had matching funds, but that was the first step. historic structures report for the first time gave us a plan forward, and we are still on that plan. And that's what guided us through the remaining portion of our restoration project. Our first grant was in 2013. Our second one was in 2015. Our third and last was in 2018. 2018, it was through the Michigan Department of Transportation's Transportation Alternative Program. We began it in 2018. It was not awarded until 22. So it took us 5 years to actually get the grant awarded. So that is the grant that we are completing right now. And I see Buzz is back. His pattern will be much different.
Yeah, so Buzz, sorry, I know we had some,
Hello.
we gotcha, you're back.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
No worries. So,
Um,
Lou, we've talked with Lou a little bit about some of his story and how he got started. We talked a little bit about the divergence between your kind of two different paths. So maybe if I go back a couple slides and you want to talk a little bit about what prompted you in some of your work and a little bit about what your kind of initial plan was, how you got involved.
So a picture's worth 1,000 words. The lighthouse has been an icon in Harbor Beach. Probably when you see that painting a little bit further, it's been a really popular icon. Everybody always looked out there. They loved to see the light twirling around and so on and so forth. And it, of course, was a very important aid in navigation as a stop point along the way. As the, very rudimentary ships, you'll call them, after the Civil War, were hauling lumber and all sorts of stuff around the Great Lakes. They needed a safe place to go. And Harbor Beach Harbor came about because the federal government was pressured by the merchants of the area up there to do something about giving us a place for these ships to ride out storms. So it sits out a mile offshore, and much like Lou's, is a couple miles offshore. Weather really takes its toll. And we showed up one summer and realized that us, being those of us who vacation in the resort inside the harbor, realized if somebody doesn't grab a hold of this stuff and get it fixed, who knows what's going to happen. And so we, three of us, sat on the break wall one day looking at this damage and said, well, this can't stand. So we started really simply just by painting. Anything we could put paint on the outside, we did. And that was the start. But as Lou said, once we got to the historic structures report level and interfacing with the U.S. Coast Guard and the state of Michigan and everything, it turned into a whole other level. And sometimes, I'm sure Lou and anybody that's done this, sometimes you looked in the mirror and think, what am I in here? This is, we didn't really have any money. I was selling T-shirts. And very happy to tell you that I've now got an endowment of about $260,000 in the bank, and we're finished with all our projects. No way back then could I imagine that we would have gone all through the paths of private donors, people that we knew, local people, to raise our money. We did have a grant to do the historic structures report, because that was sort of required, just so that they were assured of what they were going to get for a product. But yeah, we've been very fortunate that people have been really passionate. We're a mile closer, Lou. Maybe that's one of the reasons that my donors were a little more hot about protecting it. But that was really the path I took. I just nickel and dimed it, sold T-shirts, and started to ask the members of the resort to chip in, and gradually that built. And then we had a terrific patron, a guy by the name of Billy Rands, who was a banker in Detroit. And he's since passed on, but he was a private pilot. And so he used to fly us over the lighthouse, and we'd take pictures and everything. And he started the real money ball rolling by grabbing a couple people in the resort and saying, okay, Buzz has done all the work here. We got to help him with money. And to this day, his donations have been the main source of that endowment that we've been able to put together, and his family is continuing to do that. So it's just remarkable how differently you can approach pretty much the same situation and end up with the resources that you need to be able to complete the project. And I would call our project, I mean, you've seen pictures, is pretty well completed. And this is a great painting done by a local artist in Harbor Beach of back in the very early 1900s of a coal-fired freighter on its way out of the harbor. And you know, you can see it's all white in the pictures that you guys are looking at of the real thing. It's the windows are gray, dark gray and everything, but the building was not anywhere near as strong as the one we've got with the museum on the side now. So yeah, it's really been, and the great thing though, and it's one of the main reasons Lou and I are on this today and decide to do this particular project is that we have been buddies throughout, and we've leaned on each other. What I learned about his grant acquisitions helped me sort of be able to position everything, present it well. And what I was doing with private people, I'm sure got Lou into some of those vacationers that are up there. And I know that's worked, and he's been able to raise some private money to match and all that stuff. So, you know, it is a project of passion. And we've been in touch with each other for since 1885 and before, really, when we started this project. So it has been a lot of fun, a lot of ups and downs. But it's to be able to go through this today, showing people what's happened. It's an amazing feeling.
I think it really speaks to how far you guys have come. We've kind of hit some of these slides a little out of order, but that's okay. I think one of the greatest ways to show how far you guys have come, you made it onto a pop can. And Lou, I know you've got a prop.
Well, nobody
Look
would
at
ever
that.
yeah, never. I can talk the ear off an elephant. I've been in sales and marketing my whole life. And the one thing I know is that if you're sitting there on the Lighthouse and you're wondering why you have no money, you got to get off your butt and go find it. And, you know, we didn't get money from Werner's necessarily for this. This was a project they did that we urged them to do. The Harbor Beach Lighthouse is not the only one. There was a whole series of cans done with lighthouses from around the state. And you know, that lit a fire under people. The government saw that, and anything we could do to create some momentum, we had to try, and that was one of them. And people just love that can locally and everything. And we started to see local people donate. We started to see them show up for work parties. It became a point of pride for the local community too. So we have two communities. We have the local community and we have the resort. And we've always gotten along really well. But I would say that not only has this project galvanized the local community, but it's galvanized our relationship.
So that takes me to another question, looking at our slides. Lou, I know you might want to talk a little bit about this. There was actually a question in the chat too, concerning, this is from Mike Vogel. Do you have title to the entire light station or only the buildings? And does the Corps of Engineers own the crib? And maybe you could speak to some of the preservation difficulties that come with that.
Those are interesting questions. And yes, we do have title for the entire property. And I think if you have behind me here, you can see a chart that was created by Spicer. And I think if you look through the slides, I've got one which shows our description, our legal description. One of the things we realized when we first got started in this project is that the Port Austin Reef light, as are many of the offshore lights, had no description. This property and the land that you see it sitting on was owned by the federal government. Each of our offshore lights were a federal grant. The state of Michigan, the DNR, was not happy with that resolution when we came forward. Buzz has plowed a lot of ground for us, and this is one of them. 5 years of legal battles to establish the fact that this land does not belong to the Michigan DNR, it belongs to the federal government, and we were granted our title, and just inside our concrete barrier, as you can see there, which we had to devise for our historic structures report, is in fact the title to which we have. It's not just a building, it's the entire caisson and the land in which it sits. And on the left side of that photograph or that slide is actually the Acacia's document, which shows their path for their small boats into the light. They actually came in from the north we have been traditionally coming in from the south and west, but that is a path where the deepest waters are for their access. So it's a little different structure. We use that as our base, but that answers that question. We realized we had to get title to the land itself, and it took us a great long time to be able to do that. In our grant process, as I mentioned, when we talked to the U.S. Coast Guard 9th District, if you go back to that letter we received, it was a license to occupy this premises, and we didn't have to go through the U.S. Coast Guard 9th District to do that. They extended it, and this particular one, I think, yes, goes from 1989 through 2020. That was our second license. The first one we received was from 1984 through 1989. That was the first one that our group at that point began. Although this is addressed to me, was actually subleased to our association, and it was a personal license subleased to our association at that time. Now we were able to receive title to the property in 2013, so this license itself was superseded by the title award. And I forgot to mention that one of the first local grants that we got, it was a local money grant, was from a local builder, Shinosky Construction, watched as we were trying to struggle through the initial reports, and they volunteered to pay for all the material necessary to put the roof on, which they did. And that's what got us the red roof and finally sealed the building forward. And that was the first and really the only local substantial grant that we ever received. From that point on, we went to grants in the state of Michigan.
Hey, Lou, can I add something to that? Can you guys hear me okay?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep. So again, we took a little bit different path. When you see the video at the end of this, our big celebration, we worked a deal where I realized that I needed a stronger partner than just my generally older people who were donating money and everything, but they didn't know anything technical about the lighthouse or anything. So I built a safety net. It's interesting how you do this in different ways. And I had the title to the lighthouse given to the Preservation Society at the big event when we said we finally done it and it's complete and all that sort of stuff. And I then at that moment took that deed and handed it over to the city of Harbor Beach. And the reason I did that was I figured that's a government entity. They can do all this stuff all the time. I'm not going to be here forever. Hopefully Harbor Beach will be there forever, but they had a better chance of lasting longer than I did and having more horsepower. So actually what happens is we have two 50-year leases from the city. And we're in the 34th year of the first lease. And then it will renew. And then at the end of that, we'll see whether I won't be around, but the city will figure out whether it wants to still do it and everything. But it has become a huge attraction for the city. Every Saturday morning, all summer, we have a boat going out and back with tours. And they just love the fact that it's given them all this attention. Not only just sort of when people are driving by, but we actually publicize it. So isn't it interesting, Lou? Thinking about those two different steps. I wanted the thing, if anything happened to me, I just knew there wouldn't be enough momentum from anybody else to keep it going. So that's what we did.
Well, you're right. It does take a driver, like a Dick Mole driver. You just look forward and don't let anything stop you. In our case, we discovered after we did our survey, we didn't belong to either of the townships or the village. We were right in the middle of that process. So what we did a reverse. The title is in the association's name, but it reverts back to share between Point of Arcs Township, where have been our largest financial support, and the village of Port Austin. They have to figure out how to share it together if something happens to us. And that was the path that we took. And we're comfortable. We have two townships which will step in if we aren't able to complete our obligations, hopefully long after I'm taking the dirt nap, and let somebody else deal with it. But that was our path.
Yeah.
So one of the
I
things
love that
that
shot. Go ahead.
One of the things I know we might want to talk about in talking about these, programs that hopefully outlast us, that have been helpful for a lot of Lighthouse. I know the Save Our Lights program have been very helpful around the state for a number of different lights. Fort Gratiot has benefited from this with the restoration of our lantern room about a year ago. So this is one of these programs, and the way you talk about the city government hopefully outlasting things and being kind of this higher level organizational steward, and then of course you have the individuals in the driver's seat. You want to talk maybe a little bit about this specific grant program, any experience that you've had with that?
That was my grant to be able to do the historic structures report. So I forgot, I was talking to Lou about this the other day. I can't remember whether I'd done this, but I did some research, and that's what helped us with our historic structures.
And that was the first time the state of Michigan recognized the importance, the historic importance of its lighthouses, and were able to provide us a little bit of support. Again, that particular program is what we utilized, first of all, to get our historic structures report. And then once we had this historic structures report, the job one was to repair the dock. Our dock was a dangerous pile of broken concrete, re-rod, and sheet piling. We could never have begun the process of contracts and contractors utilizing that dock. We had to repair the dock first. The Michigan Lighthouse Assistance Program gave us the funds, or at least the portion that we had to match, in 2015, which we completed in 2017. Once the dock was finished, we could then move on to the next projects under the historic structures report. And again, was the one grant project we followed through almost all of our project. The current grant was through MDOT, which we can talk about a little bit farther down the pike.
Yeah,
Yeah,
let
I
me
think
add
that's
something to that. Sometimes, hang on a second. Our lighthouse at one point is four corners, obviously, because it's a rectangle base that it sits on, and it's a crib, a timber crib, that a little bit north of the city of Harbor Beach, when they started building this thing a long time ago, there was a tar pit, and the timbers were all cut and sized and put in there and soaked, and then came out so they'd be waterproof, and they still are. But there was one corner that faced the channel that was not protected, and it got through storms. It opened up the conjunction of all those timbers coming together in that corner, and literally it started to look like the stones inside were going to spill out right into the channel, and then the whole lighthouse was at jeopardy. It could have fallen right into the lake. I would have taken a while to do that, but that was a great pity cause to go to the Coast Guard, and they realized it was still an active aid navigation, whether it didn't have the Fresnel lens that we put into it later, or just whatever. And they backed us up. And the repair budget for the entire Great Lakes AIDS navigation system was diverted and all put into saving that one lighthouse because of our advocacy. And then after that, it started again so that it could be available. But that was a scary time. And again, you get these moments where you have to do amazing things to keep things fixed. Yeah, that corner that's sitting there looking right at you at the base, that's where the gap comes through, and the storms hit that. And actually they drove sheet piles. So this was just a crib. Now it actually has sheet piles driven around the outside and backfilled with more stone. And it's rock solid now, no pun intended. Thanks.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was going to ask about, is talking about, now that the bulk of that preservation work is done, that initial stabilization, how do you keep things moving forward? How do you keep moving? Because obviously there's some maintenance involved, and we talked a little bit about some of those upper level partners, but how do you work on those smaller projects, and how do you keep the passion around for what becomes kind of maintenance? It's hard. It's easy to get anyone to say, hey, this lighthouse is going to collapse into the water, come save it, or it's going to rust away, it's going to be completely apart. How do you get someone excited to paint a tower or something like that, that's maybe a little bit more mundane but just as equally important?
Okay, Lou, let me do this, because I'm just about there now, where that's all I'm doing is maintenance. But I just want to say that what happens is I developed a threshold for any material that we put into this project. It had to have a guaranteed 50-year life. And one of the most important things that we had to do was paint the tower. And because the tower was chipping, I mean, you saw the lantern room looked awful and everything. And we weren't going to just put latex paint on it. I said, we got to find something. So we found a material that basically seals the lighthouse. So it's a glue, and it's part of the paint. And we had the whole outer structure covered in that. And in doing so, they have a 50-year warranty on. That's where really I got the idea. 50-year warranty. So everything else that we've done since then has to pass the 50-year test. And if it does, then we figure, okay, not only have we set everything up financially and licenses and all that sort of stuff, but we're actually have given the structure some guaranteed lifetime.
Yeah, so, and I know you've got, your weekly tours and your interpretation that goes on there, and Lou, any plans, similar plans for that maybe into the future as you move towards that same goal of hopefully that's a great goal, I think, for all the lighthouses to be in kind of maintenance mode once you are there.
Yeah, epoxy, that's what it was, white epoxy, and great company that makes it. I've broadcast that to all the other lighthouses. And they do have different colors than white. And the really interesting thing is on sunny days, it's glossy now. You can actually see the sun reflecting off of it. And in that shot that has that I have those exterior lights on, you can actually see it reflecting, the lights reflecting off the sidewall, the side of the tower. It looks very clean and very white.
Well, we didn't do it quite as organized as Buzz did. However, if you see the lighthouse you're seeing on the left was taken last summer, right we're in the midst of our final restoration project. And what's important about this to note is two things. One, the red roof. The red roof was put on in 1990 with Chinosky Construction, because we were able to locate, this is an interesting story that has benefited the entire lighthouse industry. We were able to locate the original manufacturer, Barrage Manufacturing in Texas, who made the original shingles on the lighthouse in the 1800s, was still in business, but they had produced a shingle that no longer is tin. It was galvanized metal with a 50-year Emeron paint roof on it. That's how we started our 50-year plan. Our roof, unfortunately, now is already 30 years through that life, but they are still in quite good shape, and I'm quite happy to do that. We also replaced the dormer, which we had removed in the process of removing the roof and replacing it in 1990. We were not as historically aware at the time we started in 1990, but we had to get the roof on. The roof was job one. The dormer was a secondary thought process. We did not have the time, the money, or the expertise to replace it until this year. So every lighthouse in Michigan now who has been reshingled are reshingling with the same shingles from Barrage Manufacturing through our discovery in the early 1990s. That's kind of our claim to fame. Cool. But they're 50-year shingles. And you can see in these photographs, which you just put up. These photographs are taken from this summer during our restoration, where the dormer was reshingled up on the upper left. All of the windows, the entire lighthouse, are replaced. All of the doors were re-shimmed, and completely new door frame on the entrance, which you see on the upper right. All of the exterior has now been hardened, which means every brick has been tuck pointed, every window replaced, all of the roof has been repaired and checked because it was put on by other types or non-carpenter type people. And it is designed to last 50 plus years. In this particular photograph, we were able to encourage the contractor to continue doing work on the interior, which is a second, not a grant, it's a second fund, second contract, which we were fortunate to be able to have developed. And this is where we stepped into the private donations. The interior of the project will be finished this year using the same contractors who began it last year, and finished the Transportation Alternative Grant in September, is continuing forward to finish the interior this year. What's interesting about that, it's a story I've told some of the people that are on the stories. Last year, November of 22, in my office, in road and literally on their bikes, a couple who approached me and said, walked in my office and Lou, this gentleman I'd met before, he was from our local resort, Point of Arcs. He said, Lou, you were about the same age. He said, how long have you been doing this project? And I said, I don't know, 35 years. He goes, when the hell are you going to finish it, unfortunately? And I said, I don't know. I said, depends upon the money and the expertise. He said, well, money is no longer an object. I said, it's always a project. It's always an object. It's always something that holds us up. He said, you're not hearing my words. Money is no longer a problem. I will match what your grant was from the Michigan Department of Transportation and finish the lighthouse interior and exterior before we are both too old to climb the steps. I stood there with my mouth open. I didn't even really know how to say thank you, because it was at least a $500,000 pledge to us. He wants to stay anonymous, but it changed the whole trajectory. So a lot of the work that was done this summer was done on that particular contract, and the project this summer to finish it will be entirely privately funded. And we have one of our board members, Jody Glantz, who I think is on the call here as well, has been an outstanding fundraiser. And she also sits on an organization that's been one of our larger benefactors throughout. So I think our path forward financially is secure. We needed to raise about $300,000 for this year. We're already halfway through that with another anonymous donation of $100,000. So once it begins, as Buzz encourages, once you can start that fundraising, private fundraising, it will continue. So,
yeah, so it sounds like, really getting that ball rolling. A lot of people are on board. I'll point out also in the chat that everyone got a friendly reminder that the U.S. Lighthouse Society has annual grants program with up to $10,000 for preservation work. And I guess 2 Great Lakes lighthouses are getting funds this year, but they haven't announced that yet. So exciting things coming up. So then they're, of course, trying to grow that fund as well. So we are closing in on the last couple of minutes, and I know we do have a video coming up that we wanted to kind of end on, because we always like to talk about these, great positive things that go on at the lighthouses, to get to share some beautiful pictures, of course, to look at. But I also thought this would be a good opportunity to ask, Lou, Buzz, if you guys had a short story or reason, have you found all the work that you've poured into this, money, blood, sweat, tears, decades of time, has it been worth it? What's something that really makes you think, like, has this been, valuable? Do you think this has been worth it?
Well, I'll just start, and I'll be quick about this. For me, the fact that, and Lou did this too, we used to go out to the lighthouse all the time before we ever got started in saving them. And we'd, just look at it, and eventually, when we were able to get inside, sit on the gallery deck at night and watch the stars. It's both of us are in dark sky, certified dark sky territory, and you see amazing things. And one night, Selfridge Army Air Force down in Port Huron scrambled 4 A-10 Warthogs to come up and do circles around the top of us, watching from the gallery deck. We thought it was a planet at first, and then they were doing these strafing runs. So, they're just things that happen that if you didn't have access to that gallery deck, I never would have seen it. And that other picture is a terrific one of the sky at night behind the lighthouse. So I'll close there and let Lou have some time.
Oh gosh, yeah, we also have, because we have a radar station in Port Austin. We also were able to wave at the pilots at our level as they go by the deck, and we could actually sometimes read the names on the side of the cabin. It was really a pretty exciting process for us. We've all got times that we can remember. And I think Buzz and I could probably talk another 2 or 3 hours on all the special times that we remember. You know,
Yeah.
this has been kind of my whole adult life has been spent focused on this lighthouse. My own children were in like 5, 7, and 10 when we started. I used to drag them out there with me every Saturday. I mean, I'm surprised they even talk to me anymore. But my grandsons who live here in Port Austin now look, and they point out the lighthouse. There's Pa's house. You know, he does. And I said, well, it's not Pa's house, but they remember that I've been talking about it so much. It has been it's been a labor of love. There's no question about it. It's returned an icon, an item on the horizon in Port Austin that was largely ignored. It was just there. Some people thought it was a ship. Some people thought it was and they didn't know what it was. It was just there. It was an icon. It is now going to be returned to the fabric of Port Austin as part of its historic maritime history. Be a living historic part of the community where people can again experience what it's like to live on a lighthouse for the weekend. And that's where we're going. We modeled that off of Detour Reef. Detour has done that for 25 years successfully. That's what we want to do with our lighthouse as well. And I'm trying to encourage Buzz to do the same thing.
Yeah, but then I won't be able to go out there on a Saturday night and look at the stars again. I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
Just kidding.
That's for us is our long-term survival.
I think before we maybe we'll truly end with our video, but
Yep.
Do want to remind everyone that and Buzz, we've got one more question for the name of that epoxy product that you've used. Thunder Bay Island needs a new coating. So if you have it handy or otherwise, we'll definitely include that in our follow-up email and the video. We can definitely share that because that is what the Michigan Lighthouse Alliance is all about. We're about helping all of the lights and making sure if somebody has found something that works really well, that we get that information out to everybody. But we'll take one more last second to also plug. We do have our upcoming conference. This has been a series of 3 webinars. So if you haven't joined the other ones, those are available to watch on our website over on YouTube. And April 21st through the 23rd, Port Huron, we've got a great menu picked out. We got great food, great location, a discount at the hotel, some behind the scenes tours at some of the places around Port Huron. I think it's going to be a great time. So if you haven't registered, hop on over, register. It's a cheap conference. We're really excited to bring people from around the state into Port Huron, a place that hasn't gotten to host this before. So we hope to see you there. And we'll get you, Susan, the information on that epoxy. But take a look at this. This is something that I know we were very proud of. This is always get to accomplish one of these milestones. So this 130th birthday celebration certainly is one of them. So solid, pretty fun. It's a great video, Buzz. But I guess we have one last question here about the lens itself, which I know Buzz could probably talk about at length, and some of the again, that epoxy product. And that's something that I